Welcome, everybody. This is Justin Deschamps from Stillness in the Storm, host of Into the Storm on Rise.tv. We've got an action-packed show for you, as usual. A ton of news, a ton of information. Probably one of the most inspiring streams with respect to current events we've had in a long time, at least in my opinion. So, hello, everybody on YouTube. If you haven't already, go ahead, check out the description. In the description, you're going to find a link to Subscribestar, where you can sign up to support me and my work. You can also get access to the show notes and the full stream that we're going to do on Zoom, because about halfway through, in about an hour, I'm going to take the stream and I'm going to go private, basically, and that's going to end the YouTube stream. And a few people are asking, like, well, why do you do this? What's the whole point? Well, the point is that there's a lot of stuff I just can't talk about on YouTube because it'll get the channel taken down. So I'm taking some of that information, all the juiciest stuff, and putting it on Zoom, which then gets uploaded later to Rumble so that I can say whatever I want, basically, and not have to worry about, the controllers having a problem. So that's the reason why. The other reason why is this is the whole shindig. I mean, we're entering an age where the idea that you can have content endlessly for free is coming to an end, because guess what? That was never real to begin with. There's really no such thing as free anything. It always takes energy and work to create things. Now, somebody might want to, of their own choice, give the thing that they've created from their own work for free. And I've done that a lot of times. As a matter of fact, Stillness in the Storm is entirely free. But in order to continue doing the work, there's got to be an energy exchange. And this is part of the one of the ways that I facilitate that energy exchange is if you like what I'm doing, if you like the quality of the work on Stillness, and there's a bunch of good stuff coming, then support us and you get more of it. And I think that's the sovereign enlightened model we can be moving towards. Because if we really own our ability to contribute, to vote with our dollars, things like this, we can actually vote and help manifest a better world. And part of what I would argue is the cabal false reality is the idea that you can have anything for free. Like, there's social media apps that are free, there's Gmail that's free, but is it really free? No, it's not really free. It still takes work to produce. And more importantly, they take your information and they create a digital version of you that they can use for various insidious purposes. This is something that was revealed in the Shadowgate documentary produced by Millie Weaver, I believe her name is, Millennial Millie. So yeah, there's nothing free. The sooner we can get out of this idea that we can have the best things in life and not work for them, the better we can actually start putting work and energy towards the things that really matter to us as a people into universally applicable values like truth, freedom, justice, prosperity, protecting our children from Kabbalists and things like this thing. And we can have the better world that we actually want, I would argue. Okay, so that spiel over with. I'm going to go ahead and take the show notes. And if you're in Subscribestar, you can follow along with me. I've got a ton of articles. There's just so much. So I'm going to be doing a lot more rapid fire kind of blasts because there's just so much to cover. So let me get that prepared. If you are fortunate enough to have a Subscribestar subscription to Stillness in the Storm, which is only, it starts at $3 a month. So I'm not asking for millions of dollars here by any means. You can get access to the show notes and all that great stuff. So here's the show notes. I'm going to put that in now. And we'll get started. Now, as usual, if you have a question, just put it in the chat, or if you're on YouTube, pop it into the chat and I will, is it posting it? And I will, and if you're coming in, make sure you mute yourself if you haven't already. And if you don't, I'll try to do it for you. Oh, you know what? The post might be so big it won't let me. I think that's what's happening. Okay. All right, hold on one second. I have to split up this post because there's just so much stuff. All right, let's try this. Man, what in the heck? Okay, hold on one second here. Apologies for the delay, everybody. Well, while this is going on, do me a favor and post in the chat what you think was the most exciting thing that happened this past week with respect to devolution, with respect to Trump and what he said, because he was really active this week. Any juicy tidbits you think you have about what might be happening in a positive way, things like this, go ahead and put that in the chat. And I'm going to try to get these show notes posted. Why is this not posting? Okay, one more time. Yeah, there it is. Post it now. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to add the second part of those notes. You know, the cool thing about having the notes is that there's only so much I can reasonably cover. And there's a bunch of things that I can't go in depth on. I mean, to give you an idea, when I was starting these shows back a few months ago, and even before that, I'm somebody who's way more detail oriented than maybe I should be. Let's put it that way. I tend to want to get really deep. I could take a single article and pull it apart, fact check everything, provide a good epistemological case for why this is true or not true, or why we should be suspect, et cetera, et cetera. And there'd be a seemingly endless amount of information. And as much as I enjoy doing that, we'd have like a 20-hour stream if that was the case. So I've tried to limit that as much as possible so you guys can get as much information as you can, while also I can cover some of the deeper stuff, which is, you know, where all the fun stuff comes from. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get into it. I'm just going to look through the chat. How's it going, everybody? Like Trump continues, Ben's saying Trump continues to take credit for the vaccines. Surely he's not the right person to take forward a movement which is the defense of non-vaxxers. Well, I talk about this a lot in the streams, but let me get right into it here because there's a lot of confusion about Trump and the vaccines. You got to keep in mind that if you take the full context of what Trump has said about vaccines, he is arguably not pro-vax in the way that the cabal is. Now, the cabal wants to use, and I have to be careful, the cabal wants to use the shots, the jabs, for various not so great purposes. We'll put it that way. If you listen to what Trump has said, he's talked about how he's taking credit for the vaccines, but he's always emphasizing alternative treatments, and he's emphasizing the full, more truthful picture of the full COVID pandemic. So if you take everything into consideration, then although Trump is taking credit for the vaccines, that doesn't mean he's pro-vax. It doesn't mean that he's somehow tainted and he can't represent our interests with respect to my body, my choice, meaning I don't want an experimental jab put in my body. And I would argue that what he's doing now is one part of a grand design of benevolent social influence to cause people to wake up to the bigger picture. And it's working. I mean, we have, ever since Biden put through these vaccine mandates, the people who are kind of the fence sitters and like, well, I don't know, you know, I'm not anti-vax, but I don't necessarily like this idea of vax mandate, but, you know, it's not here yet, so I don't have to really deal with that conflict. Well, now the vaccine mandate is here. Now we have to, if you're a fence sitter, the ability to waffle and sit back and be like, oh, I don't want to get involved in a dicey argument is going to come to an end. And it has come to an end for all intents and purposes. So there's a lot of activation that's happening. There, people are finding their zeal for truth, their zeal for freedom, and their zeal for understanding what is the true rule of law, which is that, you know, you can make a drug if you want, you can make a vaccine. I'm not forced to take it. If we live in a truly enlightened constitutional republic, as we are told, then there should be no notion of valid vaccine mandate. And so that's my opinion on that. I don't think Trump is secretly pushing the vaccines, nor do I think his position on vaccines means that he can't work to talk about the anti-vax position. Although I get where you're coming from for saying that. So, all right. So let's go ahead and get into today's news. There's a ton of stuff, as I mentioned. So our first story today. Oh, by the way, thank you those of you who told me about the bouncing screen. If you were curious, in all my streams basically for the past like few months, when I type on the keyboard, the screen kind of bounces like this. It's because I had a webcam just propped on my computer, and it was like it was a not ideal setup. I decided to change the setup up so you shouldn't have to deal with that bouncing as much as you have in the past at all really. So, all right. So first thing, there are a whole bunch of F Joe Biden chants that have happened over the past several weeks. It's really encouraging to see. So let me pull up a few of these stories, and then I'll show you some of the good ones here. I found 4 articles talking about, and this is just a few of them, talking about multiple different events where Biden is being booed and people are saying F Joe Biden, basically. So let's take a look at that. Where is it? Can I actually share this? Okay. Oh, apologies. I had to get a new computer because this is just a temporary one. Because my other computer, Spacebar, decided to shit the bed on me. So as somebody who types for a living, it's been pretty challenging to be without a Spacebar. So I've had to go ahead and oh man, okay. Well, let me see. Maybe I can do it. I might have to do this one without. Oh no, there it is. Okay, great. All right. Sorry about the technical delays, everybody. One of these days, I'll get a producer who can help me with all the back end. For now, I'm just a one-man band. All right. So here's one. Videos, multiple stadiums break into F Joe Biden chants at NCAA Division I football game. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen this. Really, really inspiring. Let's listen to some of this. Is singing along to Enter Sandman. So there's the football game. Now let's find the F Joe Biden. Oh, looks like that one doesn't have a video. Okay, no problem. Hold on, I gotta drop this here screen so I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, so here's another one. So this one is crowd chants "We love Trump" and F Joe Biden at a Holyfield boxing match. So this one's just from the other day. Take a listen to this. That
was a fantastic job by a really great young man. He's got a big future, and we're just honored. Thank you. That's what everybody's saying. Everybody's cheering right now.
Man himself. Let's see if I can.
This is an honor to be with you, and what a great evening. And I think you're going to see an incredible fight. And Jorge, it's great, Junior. It's great to be with you guys and champions. We love you, man. Special people, special warriors.
Oh, there it is. F Joe Biden.
That's good.
They got the chant going that's been going around stadiums in college football for the last couple of days.
Well, it's It's a great honor, and thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, very much. We love our country. We love our country. Thank you.
Okay, so if you haven't already, there's a great set of articles. Let's see if I'll get one more, and then we'll jump back. So here's another one.
Fuck Joe Biden! Fuck Joe Biden! Fuck Joe Biden! Fuck Joe.
Great. Yeah, it honestly, I mean, it gives me chills, and you know, logical reasons why that's the case. But basically, you know, we're dealing with a situation as human beings. We have a sociological or social psychology that we use to organize our reality, especially as social creatures. So part of the reason that it feels so good to have a leader actually represent your interests is because there's a spiritual link, there's an energetic link. If somebody like Trump is going to represent my interests, then I'm going to feel good when somebody like Trump gains social prestige, because then they're going to be able to manifest things that, you know, get me what I want, basically. So I want truth and freedom. I want to live in a world where critical race theory and this radical left racism that is flowing around all over the place ends. I don't want to have various other things we could just list on until the end of time. So because I see somebody like Trump gaining social prestige, I get a little tickle in the back of my brain, in my midbrain. And that's not an accident. This is by design, I would argue, because the human being is designed to follow and seek for God, and God at a practical level is the source of the best, the source of excellence, ideal things. So in order for us to manifest the best life possible in a secular sense, as well as in a theological or divine sense, we need to have an appreciation for objectively beneficial things. And we also have to have a social mechanism that rewards and enhances individuals who gain mastery of basically knowing how to manifest God's will on earth. And so, you know, why is it that somebody like Jesus was so popular? Like, if you actually read the story of Jesus' life, which the Bible does a pretty decent job of, but I would argue the version in the Urantia book, as a lot of you have heard me say a bunch of times, and I'll keep saying because it's objectively true, the version in the Urantia book humanizes Jesus. The story of Jesus is very relatable. You can read it and you can see the human facet, the something that you can identify with and associate with, and that often, you know, makes you feel really good. So it's not an accident. Do I think that somebody like Trump decided to take this position, where he's a sports announcer, just by accident, just because he was like bored and he had nothing to do? No, of course not. He did it because he thank you. He did it because he is likely working with an alliance, the devolution team, the cadre of generals working behind the scenes as white hats to bring about freedom, prosperity, and justice, not only for the United States, but for the entire world. And therefore, we need a leader. I mean, if you've ever seen the movie Hunger Games, and the later sections of the Hunger Games, I think it's the third movie, the third and fourth movie, actually, no, it starts with the second ones, but the third and fourth movie, in addition to the second one, are basically talking about this idea that her image, the girl, the hero in the story, is needed to inspire the people, to wake them up, to get them to realize that they've been oppressed, that there is an enemy, that the people who are in power are not your friends, and we as a people need to motivate ourselves to do the hard thing of gaining freedom, which is going to come at a price. You know, when I say price, I don't mean like we have to sacrifice people on an altar so that we can appease God price. No, what I'm talking about is that truth, freedom, and justice, prosperity takes work. And we aren't living in that situation right now. We're living in slavery. We're living in a self-regulated slavery system, a mind control, mass mind control slavery system, which means that people, the way the system works is we get addicted to our own slavery. We get addicted to being enslaved. We get addicted to venerating our cabal masters. You know, it's a grand form of Stockholm syndrome, which means just like any other time you're going to have to break an addiction, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have a detox phase. And that's when we need somebody like Trump, although he's not the only one. Anybody who takes anybody who fights for objectively beneficial values, anybody who does God's will, which is another way of talking about that, you're going to inspire people. That's the kind of magic of God's will, is when you actually do things in concert with God's will and his plan. And I don't mean that necessarily in a like traditional religious sense. I mean that in a more objective scientific sense, although there is overlap there. Then you will demonstrate excellence, you will inspire people, and you will bring people together. And that's part of what he's doing. So, okay, I'll get off my high horse on that one. Just so it's really just inspiring to see that this is happening. Because I mean, for months we've been sitting around like, man, is anything happening? There's all these election irregularities. We got, Biden just torpedoing the country and the world at like every moment he can. It just seems like everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Well, again, this is the detox part of it. It needs to happen this way because we've been addicted. This is the only way for us to motivate ourselves to do something about the current situation is if we feel the burn, we feel the pain associated with our mistakes. Look what happened to the founding fathers back in the American Revolution. It's not that somebody proposed the idea of gaining freedom from King George and everybody was like, oh yeah, that sounds great, let's do it. You mean my sons and daughters might suffer? I mean, I might lose everything, I might die, I might have to sacrifice everything to make it happen. Yeah, that sounds great. Well, no, I mean, most people don't want to do that unless they've got like a rock and a hard place situation. Jordan Peterson describes it really well. We need a heaven to run towards, and we need a hell to run away from. And when you're somewhat unconscious, when you haven't been truly spiritually awakened, when you haven't risen from the grave of your spiritual nescience, which is part of the whole positive variant of, or positive aspect of Freemasonry, the positive symbolism. When you cease becoming a zombie, which is a form of occult mockery, by the way, and you reanimate yourself, you're reborn in the spirit, then you do actually want to fight for the good that's coming. You're not just content with the status quo. But for most people, most of the population, they don't know any better, not necessarily by their fault, but this is the world we're living in. So the forces of goodness, which include Trump, which include our good buddy 17 and various other forces, they are working to make the reality of the hell we're actually living in palpable for the average person. And it's working in amazing ways. So anyway, let me blast through a few of these real quick and then we'll get into some more. So Biden's motorcade was booed by a huge crowd of Trump supporters in California. That happened recently. Again, check if you're on Subscribestar, check the links. You can see that link. And if you want to see it, join Subscribestar, $3 a month. More Trump won banners are dropping at sporting events. So this is kind of becoming like, a big thing now. I'm even wondering if this was partially initiated by somebody in the alliance or the White Hats, because the Americans, I have an Australian friend, and they say, Americans, their sense of rebelliousness, righteous rebelliousness, you might say, or in other words, the desire to fight a good fight for something that's right, we'll put it that way, is incredible. If an American gets pissed off sufficiently enough that they feel that their sense of righteous indignation get activated, boy, you better get out of the way. And I completely agree. And I think this, the banners thing we're seeing at these sporting events is part of that. We need these demonstrations, these spectacles of patriotism, but more than that, a zeal for freedom, because at the end of this, I would argue, we're not just going to have the United States free and the rest of the world like burning in hell. No, what we're going to have is we're going to have a truly free world for the first time, and we don't even know, maybe before the times of the Sumerians, 6,000-7,000 years ago. So yeah, lots of good stuff there. Now, before I continue, I've got a few announcements. So I just want to remind everybody, if you haven't already gone to stillnessinthestore.com, that's Stillness in the Store, I'm going to pop it in the chat. Go ahead and check it out. We got a lot of cool things on there. Lots of, the part of the merch that you see on there is from Red Pill Living. We're working with Red Pill Living. Dustin Nemos, he's an inspiration. He's got so many cool things happening. And he actually wants to create and produce businesses and business alliances with cottage industry people. So let me just give a little spiel real quick. One of the things that cabal has done successfully is destroyed our ability to work together. Everybody's got this like every man for himself kind of mindset, or a good chunk of people. But the truth, the reality of prosperity, of making good money and running a business is you got to have good business alliances. You got to be able to work with other people to manifest all the best parts of business. So, if I want to create amazing t-shirts, do I have a place to sell these t-shirts? Well, I could try to do everything on my own, but there's only so much of me to go around. And if everybody literally tries to do everything on their own, then the quality of work is going to dip. But when you work together, when you form fellowship, trust, community, and you will actually love your brother and sister, then you can work with them and you have a symphony approach. So in a symphony, it's not that there's only clarinet players and there's no other musicians. No, every person in that symphony has a specific job. And that job, if they maximize it, if they do it well, if they embrace that facet of their lives, then everybody gets to contribute to this beautiful piece of music. Imagine if we lived in a world where literally everybody could find and pursue their unique calling, and that unique calling would add to this tapestry of communal society so that everybody flourishes and prospers. That is exactly the type of world I want to create. That's the kind of world I think Trump and the Alliance wants to create. And that's the world we can create now with each other. So I'm going to keep pounding this until it happens. But I want to work with good people who want to dedicate themselves to trust and honor so that we can all work together and form businesses that can make my life, your life, and our family and our children's lives prosper, and keep getting better and better across time. This whole idea that in order for me to have wealth, you have to not have it, this musical chairs game, this zero-sum game, is a lie. That's not the way the actual economic system works. The truth is that as long as people pursue their intelligence and they use their rights and free will to manifest things in the world, they're going to generate things of value. And then everybody's going to have more value that can be exchanged and shared between everybody. And eventually you get a society that's so insanely abundant, we don't need debt-based money anymore. You don't need taxes and all these things that force people to work, because people just want to do that anyway. So that diatribe being done, I guess it's a diatribe kind of night here. We're go ahead and check out the Stillness in the Store. I popped it in the chat. It also should be in the live stream links. So the other thing I wanted to mention here is just a couple other announcements. I had to take a few weeks off from Into the Storm on rise.tv. I am working on a new set of episodes now. I did a ton of research. There's just a ton of research I did on occultism, mysticism, spirituality, religion, Zionism, the whole neocon, neoliberal agenda, how that's been hijacked. I mean, there's just so much that I could produce about this, and I'm going to start doing these episodes. The first ones are going to be about Jack Parsons and the Babylon working, and who the Antichrist might actually be. I mean, I don't want to spoil the surprise, but when you hear about who some people think the Antichrist is, you're going to be shocked. I know when I read it, I was like, whoa, that kind of makes sense, actually. Now, when you're dealing with these things, there's no concrete proof. So if you're looking for like rock solid proof of who might the Antichrist be, you ain't going to get it. But there's a lot of very interesting information, and it helps explain a lot of things. We're going to get to see some of that on Into the Storm. I also want you to go ahead and check out Rogue Phone. I'll pop that again into the chat for everybody. If you go to stillnessinthestorm.com, on the side of Stillness in the Storm, there are ads for this thing called Rogue Phone. I'm going to pop it into the chat if you're curious. The link I'm going to pop into the chat, it allows you to support me when you purchase something from Rogue Phone. And Rogue Phone, in case you're wondering, Rogue Phone is, as a matter of fact, I'll share the screen real quick. Rogue Phone is a type of technology where you can actually get a phone that doesn't have spyware on it. You buy a specific type of phone. It's a Google Pixel, and ironically, that's the best one for this, because what the designers did is normally you have the Google firmware, then you have the Android wear that sits on top, and that's where all the spy software is. So you're using your phone, you're checking your Facebook, you're
doing everything you're doing on your phone. And you know what's happening? All your personal information on these free apps is getting sent to these big alphabet companies like Google and Facebook and YouTube and things like this. And they're turning around and they're taking your information. They're creating a digital version of you. And they're using that digital version in various war game scenarios. And they're, AI supported programs to basically figure out what's the best way to screw everybody over, to put it really simply. So with Rogue Phone, you can buy a device. The device comes with a specific type of freeware, or not freeware, an open source version of the Android operating system that has all of the nasty parts of the spyware dealt with. And as long as you know how to use the phone right, it will stay spyware free for the rest of its life. Now, you got to be careful because unlike the Freedom Phone, which the Freedom Phone has some good things going for it, but when I spoke to the developer about this, he told me that the Freedom Phone actually has a lot of holes in it. So with this, there's a little more responsibility on you, the user. You have to know what you're doing, but you can like basically guaranteed have a spyware-free phone as long as you use it properly. So go ahead and check that out. And last announcement, and then I'm going to get right into some more stuff here. In about 2 weeks, I'm going to be moving across town. So I'm going to really work hard to make sure that I have time to do a stream. But I might have to do a stream early or later, depending on what's going on. There's a lot to do. So just bear with me there. Appreciate all of your prayers and support with all that. And now let's get into it. So we did the Joe Biden chants. Now this is a fun one. If you haven't seen this, I got a real kick out of it when I saw it the other day. A friend of mine sent it to me. And where is it? There it is. So, did you know that Amazon's game engine has a zombie clause? Yeah, that's right. Now, this is an old article, but every time Amazon updates their terms of service with respect to this specific facet of their game engine, it's not all Amazon terms of service, it's just their game engine, which is called the Lumberyard. Yeah, Lumberyard game engine. Then this thing seems to surface. So now what I thought was interesting is it's not a direct proof of predictive programming, but the underlying facets of what is described in this terms of service is categorically and conceptually related to what's happening with COVID. So when it comes to predictive programming, it's not like a one-to-one. It's not that they talk to us about an outbreak in the movie Outbreak, and now here we are 20 years later, and it's a perfect expression of what was depicted in Outbreak. No, that's not the way it works. They intentionally make things conceptually equivalent, but not specifically equivalent. You can't be a literalist. You have to think abstractly. So it's an abstract version of predictive programming, because the goal of predictive programming, or mass mind influence, is to incept or plant ideas in your mind, okay? And then those ideas get slowly added to each other. So you might pick up an idea from a magazine you read, you might pick up an idea from a TV show, you might pick up an idea from a piece of music. And the pieces are fairly innocuous. You're not, when you're looking at just one little piece of it, you're like, well, yeah, it's a little crazy, but it's not that big of a deal. But it's when you take those little pieces and you assemble them in a multiple different ways and across time, that's when this predictive programming really works its magic. And if you want, probably one of the best examples of predictive programming is 9/11, the September 11th attacks. There was media being produced. I saw one as early as the early 80s that was talking about 9/11. And again, you're not going to see like, a movie from 1980 that's literally showing exactly what happened on 9/11. Again, it doesn't work that day. But from an abstract perspective, if you take that specific interpretation and you pull apart and create an abstraction, then that abstraction is kind of like, are all circles beach balls? No, but a beach ball does fit into a circle. And now that circle collapses a set of potential conceptual possibilities so that it can be used elsewhere. I know it's a kind of rough way of explaining it, but yeah, that's what I think is happening here. So let's look at this. So, not quite out of the blue, Amazon unveiled its Lumberyard game engine yesterday. This is 5 years ago. Free game development software based on Crytek's CryEngine. And in a humorous bit of viral marketing for the game engine, it's funny how they call this marketing. It's not untrue the way they phrase that. The company included a zombie clause deep within Lumberyard's terms of service. It reads, emphasis added. So I'm going to just read the whole paragraph. So this is paragraph 57, subsection 10, accepted use of the Lumberyard software. Safety, critical systems. Your use of the Lumberyard materials must comply with the AWS acceptable use policy. The Lumberyard materials are not intended for use with critical life or safety critical systems, such as use and operation of medical equipment, automated transportation systems, autonomous vehicles, aircraft, or air traffic control, nuclear facilities, manned spacecraft, or military use in connection with live combat. So it's interesting. I'm not exactly sure what the Lumberyard does, but it appears to be some type of, first-person shooter, war type of game scenario. Maybe third-person, but first-person player while third-person view. It might even be something like the old Warcraft or Myst, which is a game that Bungie came out, and I played that back when I was a kid. So it's like, two teams competing against each other. So this is the funny part, and the part that's, like, oh, what's going on here? However, this restriction will not apply in the event of the occurrence certified by the United States Centers for Disease Control or successor body of a widespread viral infection transmitted via bites or contact with bodily fluids that cause human corpses to reanimate and seek to consume living human flesh, blood, brain, or nerve tissue, and is likely to result in the fall of organized civilization. So, like I said, funny, right? Oh, this is just a big joke. And yeah, it probably was written by the people who wrote it thinking it was funny. So, I'm not going to say that it's necessarily a huge, massive conspiracy. However, if you look at the characteristics of what we're dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, and then you combine that with the characteristics of what Mark Passio calls the unbegun spiritual status. So basically, when you are, one of the deeper facets of occultism, dark occultism, is the idea that, and this is something that reaches into the original Aryan philosophy that was basically the Persian variant of dark occultism and Satanism. That was the thing that kind of wove its way all the way up to present times. Its basic core philosophy there. Well, basically what that says is you have a dualistic universe, and this dualistic universe has a god of light that sits above and a god of darkness that sits below. And they are equal to each other, and they're battling throughout all time for superiority and things like this sort. And specifically, they wage war in the hearts and minds of human beings. So in this system, you have three types of humans. You have the Ba-man, which is the spiritually ascended, what is the word called? Avatar human. So somebody who knows who they are spiritually, they know the purpose of existence, they know the laws of existence, and they have mastery sufficient enough so that they can will their own death and then will their own incarnation in the future. So that's the avatar. Then you have human. Human is somebody who's, alive enough, but they are subject to the reincarnation cycle. And in the system, we won't go too deep into it, but in the system, if you make a mistake, if you sin in this life, then you could be reincarnated as, a can of soda or something like that, or, come back as a slug. And there's one more, and that is the, I forget the name of it, but basically it's the subhuman. So it's subhuman in the sense that you're spiritually dead. You're alive, your body is animated, but there's no spirit working in here. Either the spirit is imprisoned by the body because the body has never pursued truth and tried to seek spiritual wisdom, or they are like spiritually tainted. And so in this dualistic system, the Manichaean, also it's very similar to Zoroastrianism. It basically asserts that there's a spiritual type of human that is justifiably enslaved. So what this all means is that when you are spiritually dead, when you're unbegun, you're like a zombie. You're alive, you're an animated corpse, but there's nothing in here. You're just subject to your animal brain, which is in the midbrain, and the animal brain seeks for what? It seeks for food and its own survival above all else. What do zombies do? They seek for food and brains, and not so much their own survival, but they're self-serving. Zombies aren't like teaming up to overthrow humankind. No, the zombie's like trying to get that guy's brains over there, and he doesn't care what happens to him on the way over. His arms will get ripped off. He'll trample over his zombie brethren. Well, what did we see last year with this whole race riot, COVID insanity? The NPCs, the non-player characters, the non-player characters are these people that are, they think they're supporting racial justice and Black Lives Matter, but they're literally, it's like you took this corporate agenda, this cabal agenda, and you just like grafted it into their head. And they're not really like a human being who can think on their own. They're just a zombie, basically. So do you see the connection here? The correlation, the conceptual correlation. Again, the way to analyze this stuff properly is you got to distill the description. You got to distill the content, the article in this case about the zombie clause in Amazon. You got to boil it down to its essential components, the things that it's doing, and then take those things and look to see if you see any other similarities. And I would argue there's a definitive categorical relationship, a correlation between the COVID pandemic and the zombie apocalypse, insofar as the behavior of people and their spiritual status. And the last point on this is this dualistic, dark occult, satanic viewpoint, to put it plainly, the dark Luciferian viewpoint, says that when people are unbegun, when they're spiritually dead, they're worse than animals. And you can kill them, you can steal from them, you can manipulate them, you can do anything you want to them because they're not really a human being. So there's no moral necessity to do anything other than get them out of your way so you can manifest what you need to manifest in life. So this is the viewpoint of some of the people that are in positions of power right now. And Jeff Bezos, Amazon, do you think he might be one of these people? I can't make any definitive claims, but just ask yourself, what does Amazon serve? Does Amazon serve to feed the irrational and all-consuming consumeristic culture that we find ourselves in right now? Has that Amazon hijacked, stolen, and usurped the ability for individuals to produce their own beneficial businesses, like we were talking, a little while ago? I think so. All right. Well, let me, now that wow, it's already 7:43. Okay. Let me see if there's anything in here. Yes, we'll go ahead and we'll talk about the Mike Milley situation. Just give me one moment. Okay. So I don't have a whole lot on the Mike Milley situation, but I wanted to speak a little bit to it because we are, I would argue, witnessing, just like we talked about the last time with Afghanistan, the Afghanistan situation, in my mind, is likely and not something that the cabal wanted to have happen. I don't get that. I don't necessarily, sorry, I'm having a hard time mashing these words into a coherent sentence. It is my current suspicion, although I'm obviously entertaining multiple different possibilities, that Afghanistan was a blunder on the cabal's part, that it was engineered by the white hats to make the cabal look bad, to reveal that within the military, the US military in particular, there are cabal black hats, basically. And heretofore, the military organization is something very dicey in the sense that it's an order that's founded and devoted to loyalty, right? So you join the military, you have to swear allegiance to, the Constitution, and you have to be devoted to honoring the brotherhood. So it's basically a military brotherhood. And I say that because when somebody's in the military, they have a loyalty and duty to their brethren in the brotherhood, in the military organization. And I say brotherhood, that doesn't mean that I'm excluding women. I hope that's clear. So What that means is that to go against, to violate your orders, to speak badly about the military in general, even if it's been hijacked, it feels like a betrayal to a lot of the people in it. So in order for people, and it's hard to sell, if you came out 20 years ago when 9/11 had just happened, and you're like, oh, by the way, did you know 9/11 was an inside job and the military was partially involved and NORAD was, the most complex air defense system on the planet somehow got taken out by a bunch of people who could barely fly planes 6 months ago. Nobody would in the military likely want to risk their reputation and potentially risk the sense of social betrayal associated with speaking badly about the military. But now, 20 years later, we've got 20 years of really bad blunders, betrayal of the American ethos, we'll say. And now we have a situation where Mike Milley, I think his name is, General Milley, was basically caught talking to China and, trying to manipulate the aims and agenda of the military over in Afghanistan. So I think the situation is being used by the white hats to try to wake people up in the military. And this will continue to build up. I don't think we're at the end yet. I think there's a big bomb that has yet to drop. There's a lot of little things that are happening. So we're kind of at like the subtle aspect of the awakening. What I mean by that is there are events that are happening out here in the real world. I'll turn this way. There are events that are happening out here in the real world. And then there's observations you're making internally. And until the events are big enough so that you feel like you need to make a line in the sand, people will kind of sit back and not want to do anything, especially people in the military, I would argue, because they don't want to betray their brothers and sisters in the military. So I think things are building up in a big way. The vaccine mandate for the military was also a big part of this operation, I would say. I'm not going to have time to play any of it because it's just too long and I don't want to spend too much time on just one thing, but I'll pop in the chat. It's in the show notes, of course, but I'm going to pop into the chat a video of Trump on Gutfeld, which, by the way, apparently Gutfeld is like one of the most popular nighttime news shows like right now going on, which is, I did not think that was happening. So that just tells you where we're at. Somebody like Gutfeld, which, he's a loud, obnoxious, rude, frank, says what's on his mind, doesn't hold anything back kind of character. And I'm not knocking him, I'm just saying that's who he is. He's not a polished, like demure, like, oh, like, let me clutch my pearls and see what's happening. Like, that's not the guy. This guy is really in your face. He's radically honest, just like who? Donald Trump. So isn't it interesting that it's not Stephen Colbert, it's not Jimmy Fallon or any of these other, people like the guy from Comedy Central, who's just got like this giant deep state fist like rammed up their rear end because they're basically a puppet for the cabal. Those guys aren't the ones that are winning the viewership of the American people in the audience. It's somebody like Gutfeld. And what does that tell you? Does it tell you that maybe people are ready for the truth and that we're building up to something really positive? I think so. So like I said, I'm going to pop this into the chat. There is a point in here, and this is actually speaking specifically to the vaccine issue. You know what? Let me see if I can pull it up because it's this one part I wanted to show you guys is so poignant with respect to this vaccine issue that when I saw it the other day, I was just like blown away. I'm like, you know what? This is the reason why Trump is doing what he's doing with respect to vaccines. So let me see if I can find it here. Bear with me. Okay, I think I found it. Okay, here we go. All right. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to pull up the screen and you're going to hopefully get a kick out of this. So this is the Gutfeld from the other day.
and he should, if I've got it queued up right, he's going to talk about vaccines. So it's like maybe a 2-minute clip. So let's give it a shot.
Joe Biden to Trump in the world of vaccines. And you saw the interview last night. He was talking about persuading my wife to get the vaccine. There's a noticeable contrast between who can persuade and who can't.
Well, it wasn't even that. What he did was he talked as somebody who is a parent, is a father, and a leader, and how important it was. And he put some facts behind it. But it was a very, I guess, un-Trump-like response, because we're always used to the narrative where he doesn't care about me, he's very selfish. But he was giving you good reasons, and at the same time, he was also respecting your wife's decision not to do it.
Right.
He's, and then from the other side of it, the side that's supposed to be that way, he was basically threatening us.
Right, Biden.
But by telling somebody, we're losing our patience with you.
Yeah.
That's his frustration. You hired your administration. You're not getting rid of anyone. And the worst part, the reason why that didn't get a lot of attention was because mainstream media's whole narrative is that it's the Trumpers that don't get vaccinated, and that those are the ones that are hurting the country.
Listen.
The leader of the Trumpers is not only vaccinated, he's promoting to get vaccinated, and he's doing it in a way to where you're comfortable with it. He didn't insult your wife. He didn't say, if I was you, I'd divorce her.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's what, so we're seeing the size of what was supposed to be. You put those two interviews together, run them side by side, and you look at yourself, who's the bully and who the American people are going to listen to? And it's President Trump.
Jason,
Bam. I mean, that was so good. What he just described is exactly the reason why Trump is doing what he's doing with vaccines, I would argue. Because you're taking people, we're talking about normies now. So these people aren't
conspiracy researchers, they're not anti-vaxxers, they're just regular people trying to live their lives. And you got Joe Biden, who's pushing vaccines down their throat nonstop amongst all the other things that he's doing. And then you have Trump, who's also pushing the vaccine, but in a way that's respectful. It honors your body sovereignty. And he gives you other alternative. He's like, listen, the vaccine's great. He's going to talk about how amazing it is. And I think that's a strategic thing. I think there are other things he's not saying about vaccines because he doesn't want to, because he's doing something strategic. It's tactical. But he does it in a way that honors and respects your rights. And he gives you alternatives to the vaccine. And why? For the very reason that guy just said, which is that when in comparison, you're going to see Trump as somebody who's like, you know what? I don't necessarily agree with what he's saying, but he respects my sovereignty. And that is somebody that I can work with and I have respect for. That's the perspective I think we should be focusing on. Don't get there's so many people that are just like flailing their arms around because Trump is talking positively about vaccines. And I get it. Don't get me wrong. Like, yeah, it sucks. I don't want to necessarily have to potentially deal with some craziness around vaccines. But where we need the strategic facet of it. We need Trump to do this in a way that wakes everybody up so that when finally all this tension that's been being built for the past, 5 years minimum, all of that's going to come to a head. And just like when the Tea Party hit back in the American Revolution, all these people that were sitting on the sidelines before are going to be like, wait, you know what? It's time. I got to get in there. So I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing this. All right, let's see what else we got. The video was quiet. Did it? Do me a favor. Somebody signed off in the chat if the video was too quiet. Yeah, it looks like it. Well, if it is too quiet, just check the chat, and in the chat there's the video. It started at about 11 minutes, something like that. Okay, so let's continue on here. Let me pull up the. Okay. Thank you, Ryan. I'll keep that in mind. I'll make sure to turn up my volume when I play videos. Okay, so Trump visited the 9/11 memorial. This was on the 9/11 day, last Saturday, I believe. And what was interesting is, Biden shows up. He's got like a whole bunch of, it's like a motley crew, like reunion for the Brat Pack cabal, like Kabbalists, right? A bunch of Satanists getting together and have a good time, celebrating their victory from 9/11. And then Trump, who doesn't go to that official event, as far as I know anyway, he goes directly to precincts or directly to first responders and starts interacting them without notifying the press. That's what I heard. So if that's true, then, it is, again, we're dealing with a war of political opinion. And what that does is it demonstrates more of Trump's admirable qualities. And it's just really, nice and inspiring. Another thing is Trump visited the 17th precinct. Now, of all the places for Trump to visit, are we to believe that him visiting the 17th precinct has no meaning? Everything has meaning. What is the 17th letter of the alphabet? I mean, I don't have surely enough to spell it out for you guys, but when I saw this, it reminded me of the fact that there were people who had lost hope and thought that everything was that it was all just a bunch of BS and a psyop. And I think it was a psyop, but just not in the way people think. The psyop is still running, and it's working beautifully. It's a psychological operation designed to wake people up, designed to alert people to the truth, and designed to get people in the military and various other places, on board with the agenda of freedom. And it's working wonderfully. And the more Trump does these things, the more it helps reinforce the base of freedom fighters that are growing and growing by every day. All right, let's see. So there's apparently, let me just check when this article came out. It might be relevant. Okay. So there is a story. There is a warning of a fake flag. When I say fake flag, hopefully you know what I mean. It's what happened in the Gulf of Tonkin. In the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Probably not pronouncing that right, but that's good enough. So this is the story. Chinese state-run media chief predicts another deadly attack on America. The editor-in-chief of the Chinese state-run media outlet Global Times appeared to predict another deadly terrorist attack on the United States. Hu Jing, who heads the state-run newspaper, made the prediction in a tweet on the 20th anniversary of September 11th. Interesting that he chose that day to make this warning. Quote, "The September 11th attacks was suicide attacks by 19 terrorists, but it was not the suicide attack of terrorism. Terrorism will accumulate power to launch the next deadly attack. Time will prove that it is a mistake for the US to regard China as its biggest adversary," he wrote. Well, that's kind of interesting. I mean, I would say interpreting that, it could be a subtle threat. It could be that there's something else going on. I'm not exactly sure what that means, when the time frame is, but it seems like that is itself a kind of shot across the bow. Now, let me pull up another one, because this is a good time to talk about the other story I had. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So this story, this came out, this is an older story, but it's really relevant. I just had a friend of mine clue me into it recently, and it reminded me of, there is a set of things that Trump did in his first year in office in 2017. He visited Saudi Arabia and participated in the sword dance ceremony, I believe, which is something that never happens. A foreigner to participate in that ceremony indicates that Trump was inducted into some, basically like royalty. Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, I believe, in 2017. He visited North Korea, and he did this. He had a cup of tea with Xi Jinping in the Forbidden City. Now, this is no small thing. The Forbidden City has always been something that's, basically not, foreigners are not allowed to enter there for the most part. But of all people, like the arch enemy of freedom, President Xi, I believe he's the president, for him to invite him in, I think is symbolic. Now, some people think that Xi is actually part of the alliance, that he is working with the White Hats and he is himself high up in the organization, and that the Chinese Communist Party does not like Xi. I think that's definitively a possibility. I don't know exactly what's happening, but keep in mind, one thing I want to reinforce when we talk about this idea that there are white hat assets in the heights of cabal power is that the same people who moved forward probably one of the most advanced self-running slavery systems to ever touch the planet Earth in human history now are making blunder after blunder after blunder after blunder. Like, what is up with that? You know, is it part of some grand design? Maybe, but I don't think so. I think we give the cabal too much credit. These people, once you study like what the cabal actually does and the way they operate, and especially the neo-nihilistic cabal, because there's the more spiritual cabal, the spiritual Satanists, as I like to call them, they were way more respectful of wisdom because they literally worshipped Kashaka, the Lord of Darkness. Remember that I was talking about before? You have the Lord of Light and the Lord of Darkness. That's Kashaka from the Aryan and Manisha religion. And that God is the God of darkness is the God of knowledge, wisdom, and learning. And basically the precept of their dark religion is that if somebody demonstrates wisdom and knowledge, then you can't mess with them because they've been blessed by this dark God, right? So those people, like I said, created one of the most advanced and masterful self-run slavery systems on the planet. And I'm talking about the law system. I'm talking about the way they steal your rights when you're born. They declare you mentally insane, a lunatic, lost at sea. And they've created it's a brilliant. When you study the legal cabal, the legal self-running slavery side of the cabal system, you have to pay respect for these people because they just did it so fantastically well with respect to mastery. Now, when you look at what the cabal is doing, it's like they don't know what the hell they're doing. And one of the theories I hold, it's not necessarily the only one, is that I think the head has been cut off the snake. I think that assets, white hat assets, most likely, or possibly, I'll put it that way, white hat assets have possibly climbed their way up into the heights of cabal power and sat there and were asleep effectively for possibly decades to build up to this point. And possibly Xi is part of that because, again, Trump went and had a cup of tea in the Forbidden City. You would have think that if they're going to invite anybody, it'd be the golden boy Obama, who, you know, they just love and they want to make him seem like he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But instead, Trump gets in. Very interesting. All right. All right, I've got a couple questions here. Let me check the okay. Let me pull up the agenda. So I'm going to blast through a few of these, then I'm going to answer a couple questions, and then we're going to go to the private version. So while I'm doing this, if you want to join Subscribestar, like I said, it's $3 a month, super dirt cheap. I'm going to give you 2 live streams a month, and all the show notes, everything I'm doing right now, you're going to have access to, and you can ask me questions, and you can suggest topics, you can do all sorts of things. And you know, I've been promising this, and it's definitely going to deliver on this at some point here in the future. But I'm going to start being a lot more active, and there's going to be some content that I'm only going to release through this private venue because this helps give me the funds I need to do the work I want to do. And I have big aspirations. I want to create an academy that teaches people how to think better, critical thinking. I want to teach people the system of discernment and fact-checking that I've learned. I want to teach people how to have better relationships, and so we can have trust and fellowship and actually have abundant businesses, have functioning families, know how to teach our kids properly, know how to safeguard ourselves against political enemies and the cabal. I want to spearhead all these things, and it takes money to do that. So if you support, it'll definitely help. All right, so let's let me blast through a few of these. So last week, a few days ago, a mayor of I believe it was a mayor of Cincinnati, Ohio. Here, let me just pull it up so I make sure I know what I'm talking about. Mayor tells school board, resign or you'll be charged over child pornography. An Ohio mayor did not mince words. Let me pull up the share screen so you guys can see. An Ohio mayor did not mince words, calling for school board members and teachers to resign after students received a book of inappropriate writing prompts which asked minors to engage in illegal behavior. Yeah, it's disgusting. So what happened? Well, let me just play the video. It pretty much speaks for itself.
I'll fill you in a little bit on what's going on.
Members of the board, my name is Craig Schubert. I'm the mayor of this city. It has come to my attention that your educators are distributing essentially what is child pornography in the classroom. I've spoken to a judge this evening. She's already confirmed that. So I'm going to give you a simple choice. Either choose to resign from this Board of Education, or you will be charged. Thank you.
Awesome. I love the round of applause he gets too. So basically what happens is
Board approved a book called, what is it, like 642 things to write about or something like that. Yeah, there it is, 642 things to write about. And in that book, the book asks kids to, this is a quote right here, write a sex scene you wouldn't show your mom. Another quote, write the sex scene from above into one that you'd let your mom read. Describe a time you wanted to orgasm but couldn't. Write an X-rated Disney scenario and the first time you had sex. Now, they didn't say exactly what age we're dealing with, so I'm assuming we're not dealing with like first and second graders because they don't really know how to write anyway. So we're probably at the earliest we're dealing with middle schoolers. But still, this is ridiculous. The fact that this, can be pushed to children is just so alarming. It's alarming for many different reasons. One, that we as a people have been so totally blinded to what right and wrong is that we think that people in a school board who are literally holding an office that's specifically tasked to protect and safeguard the innocence of children are failing utterly at that position to let something like this through is staggering. So, just like the if we're seeing this come from the school board, how many other things are happening behind the scenes that we don't know about, right? Kind of tip of the iceberg phenomenon here. So there's that. It's really good news that this is happening, and this is likely going to start an avalanche, a snowball of disclosures about these kind of things. Okay, so a couple questions. David, I'm gonna answer your question on the private side of the chat because I'm sure if I answer it now, YouTube's gonna shut us down. So as a matter of fact, looks like these other questions, yeah, I'll go ahead and answer those on the other side. Let me get through some more of these. So there's an article here, censorship and discrimination. If you're ugly, TikTok is social media for the shallow. Yeah, this is definitely true. My fiance, she recently got TikTok, and she's been looking at it, trying to figure out what's going on with it. And we did a look at the top 100 TikTok influencers and content creators, and almost all of them were beautiful people. We found one overweight person, but even the overweight person had a facial geometry that was in alignment with the golden mean ratio beauty. So I don't know if you've heard this before, but you can actually take a facial skin or like an image, a sketch, and it has like these lines, like grid lines, and these lines will literally show the idealized facial geometry with respect to the golden mean ratio. And if you take that image and you overlay it onto beautiful people, then you will see that there is actually a scientific way to validate beauty. So give me one moment. I'll just pull it up here to show everybody. So what I suspect is that the cabal, they know, and they have known for a really long time that, here we go, here's one. So if you can see, this is the image. The woman that they chose fits this image. This is another one of Angelina Jolie. Now, what's interesting is with Photoshop, they can actually take your face and they can stretch it out so it better fits this grid schema, this vector blueprint. Forgive me, I can't remember the word, and what this will do is it'll make people look more beautiful. So why are they doing this? Why do they want TikTok influencers to be beautiful? Well, because we're dealing with people who understand us better than we know ourselves. They know that physically beautiful people are more likely to have social status than not physically beautiful people, you know? And what that means is if you want to manipulate a population, you want to hijack their minds and get them to do things that you want to have beautiful people talking about the agenda, which will naturally lead people to want to follow them by virtue of the fact that they're beautiful. That's one, but also that they're popular. So those two elements combined, and there's a few others, will create a social incentive to where you as a person, you're watching this happen, you'll feel a very strong animalistic kind of subtle instinct to give more credence to somebody who's physically beautiful talking about it versus not physically beautiful. I mean, to me, this isn't like a huge, revelation, because if you look at advertising and movies and things like this, they often choose physically beautiful people. So the reason they're doing it with TikTok, I would argue, is they want people to basically be influenced by TikTok influencers. And TikTok is the other agenda with TikTok is it wastes your time. Spiritual currency is time. What do you get good at? What do you gain mastery of? What can you be competent in? How can you defend yourself against falsehoods and narratives and perils? You need to gain knowledge and have wisdom. How do you gain knowledge and wisdom? Because you spend your time and focused attention on things that will gain knowledge and wisdom. If you don't do that, you're not going to have knowledge and wisdom. You're way easier to control. So that's another thing with TikTok. All right, so let's see. Let me get a few more out here. Bill Gates to further expand influence by launching his own news publication. So Bill Gates is producing his own news publication. Can we get an army of trolls to troll the hell out of that guy? I think so. All right, so this is a really cool one. Let's see. I'm going to do these last few, and then we're going to go private. And there's a bunch of other stuff I got in the pipeline here. So let's see. I'm going to pull this up. Is it going to let me pull it up? Yep, there it is. And then I'll pull this one up too. All right. So this I'm about to show you, this is a comedy special that a good friend of mine and fellow host on edgeofwonder.tv, he's putting together a special called Theorize About Conspiracies, and it's a comedy special. And the comedy special is going to have some fun, really fun stuff. So let me pull it out here. I'm going to pop open. And we're going to share the screen. And I'll make sure the volume's nice so you guys can hear it. So this is Simon Esler. He's on rise.tv, by the way. And he's also, I think he's got his own platforms that he's working with. So I'll share some of his information in the chat as this is playing. All right, so here we go.
It's incredible to me that people struggle to understand why someone would decline the vaccine and the passport system, because anyone with a brain knows that there will be the same unending hysteria coming from public health experts about new variants forever. Now, current studies coming out of Israel show that the Pfizer vaccine wanes within 3 to 5 months. So we're all in this together in communism. And also, you'll need the latest booster or you can't take transit to work. So you're not just asking me to take a vaccine. You're asking me to receive vaccines as a lifestyle choice. You're asking me to accept an unending streak of vaccines, not only for the rest of my life, but as a condition of my freedom. Do you understand how dumb you are if you think anyone's opposition to this maniacal proposition is in any way inappropriate? No, I don't want infinite boosters forever as a condition of my own freedom. What the hell? Why is anyone advocating for this? Vaccines. An unending stream of vaccines for me and my children and all children who will be born into this dystopia. You want a world where pharmaceutical companies are tasked with perpetually producing the one and only substance that can lend us temporary, conditional freedom? Use a small, tiny burst of free thought, just a little bit. Why are there people saying no to forever vaccines as a condition of life on Earth? Why do we exist? Is it hard to understand why this level of submission is unacceptable? Please. All of you attempting to shame your fellow humans for standing against an obvious attempt to redesign our society into a tyrant's wet dream are failing to think clearly. No, we do not want infinite vaccines forever. Okay? Yeah, thanks.
Okay, well, that was great. But that's not actually the preview I wanted to show you. So give me one moment here. That again, that was Simon Esler. I think he just eloquently delivered, a conceptual smackdown on, basically.
This special has been brought to you in part by trees.
Hold on. He just delivered an amazing smackdown on some of the false premises of the vaccine that everybody, I'm sure, on this call is well aware of. So let's see. Where is that video? Okay, here we go. All right, so give me one moment. Now I'm going to play you the preview for his comedy special. There we go.
This special has been brought to you in part by trees. Trees, helping humans ascend since the dawn of time. Hi, my name's Carl. I'm a tree, and I was asked to share a message on this special. So, basically just stop ignoring the multi-dimensional gifts that we keep sharing with you to support the ascension of this whole species. We're really confused, to be honest. We've been in this multi-dimensional stillness, just kind of, offering this the whole time. You keep spiraling into chaos. So if you could just, hook up with a tree. There's lots of us. We're here. We're ready to help. So, yeah. Okay. Enjoy the rest of the special. Okay. Good luck ascending. Okay.
There you have it. So that should be fun and interesting. All right. And then the next one, actually, let me grab his, where is it? Link share. There's Linktree. So this is Simon's Linktree. This is all of his various places to find him. It's actually a pretty cool service. You can basically create like a landing page for everything. So this is pretty cool. So go ahead and check that out. That's Simon Esler. And then lastly, for our last YouTube friendly presentation, we're going to learn about hempcrete. Now, if you haven't heard about hempcrete before, it's really cool, actually. I heard about this a few years ago, but I didn't really look into it too in depth, and it can do some amazing things. So, we live in a world right now where a lot of our building materials are made of, either non-sustainable products or stuff that's just not that great. For example, concrete and rebar, steel rebar, the thing that reinforces concrete, it takes away from your auric breathing, basically. So you have a bioelectric field. Your bioelectric field pulses and it interacts with the bioelectric field of other people, as well as the electric field of the earth, the electromagnetic field of the earth. And it's really important that you have that connection. There's already been a whole bunch of mainstream studies on how beneficial that actually is. Well, with steel rebar, the steel in concrete literally creates distortions in the bioelectric field. It kind of squishes the field. And this is one of the reasons why living in cities, if you ever lived in like a giant, or not even a giant, if you've ever been in a big metal and concrete building for a long period of time, whether it's for work, like you ever go in Walmart and you're like, it feels like really draining. Well, part of it is because of this, I would argue. Or if you've been in a big city and you start to get a little neurotic, and they've already shown, demonstrated psychologically that cities tend to have more neurotic psychological conditions, narcissism, anxiety disorders, various things like this. Well, it's partially because your bioelectric field is needed to unpack itself fully, and you have to have a living environment that allows you to breathe. And if you've ever seen the documentary, it's really fascinating. I think it's like a 20-minute video. It's called The Mouse Utopia Experiments, where they tried to take, this guy tried to take a living habitation where the mice would be given food, water, and access to shelter. So all their basic needs met. And he tried to see how many rats basically would breed in this enclosure. And it topped off at around 250 in like a 6 by 6 foot enclosure. But they started developing a ton of maladaptive behaviors. A quarter of the population became homosexual. Another quarter of the population were sex addicts. Another quarter of the population were like were catatonic and not catatonic, sorry. So they didn't socialize with any of the other rats. So a lot of the nasty conditions are as a result of your auric field not being able to breathe, but hempcrete can, and it does a lot of other cool things. So let's go ahead and check it out.
And put a flame directly on the material and it does not burn. No smoke, no flame spread. And if you feel the back of the material, as you can tell, I'm holding my hand on it, so there's no thermal transfer. We manufacture sustainable building materials. And what we mean by sustainable is we use hemp and lime. Here in Alberta, there's an abundance of hemp that's already processed, and we have an abundance of lime as well. What we've developed is a structural block that does not require any cement or concrete or rebar. You simply stack the blocks up like Lego. There's an adhesive binder that goes between them, and you're done. The number one advantage to having a hemp building system is the indoor air quality and comfort for the occupants. So people living in the building, it regulates humidity. There's no mold that can grow. It's very warm and even temperatures. It's cooler in the summertime. It's basically just an ideal building material for interior comfort and air quality.
So
when
cool.
The plant grows, it absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and it's stored in the material of the plant itself as carbon. And so we capture about 6 kilos of CO2 per block in the actual material. So by the time the building is complete, it'll actually have a negative carbon footprint because of using our materials. This is a pilot facility, and we're working towards commercial production.
So cool, man. I love geeking out about that kind of stuff. So as you can see, it's really beneficial. You could use this in a whole bunch of different ways. You could make sustainable buildings. He didn't mention it, but because the block is itself not like a concrete crystal. So concrete, it's very brittle, which means it can take compressive force well, that's static. But if you got a lot of movement, then you're gonna get cracks in the concrete. And that's been a problem for a long time. But with a material like this, it's very similar to like the Great Pyramids. The pyramid blocks are all irregular, and that irregularity creates a very stable static structure that can withstand all sorts of crazy stuff. So amazing material. All right, everybody. Well, now I am going to transition into the Zoom link only, and I'm actually going to do something that I don't do often. because I want to give you guys a taste of how fun these Zoom chats are, I'm actually going to make the Zoom link shareable for everybody. So I'm going to take the Zoom link. I'm going to post it in the chat. If you're in Zoom right now and you want to send this to a friend of yours and have them check it out, go for it. Obviously, the link won't be good after the stream ends, but you know, they can pop in if they can. And I'm also going to put it on YouTube. So if you guys want to join in on the YouTube side, you want to see what's happening on the other side of the veil, come on over. You're invited. We're going to do this one. And we're going to invite people in. You get to see exactly all the cool stuff that I talk about when we don't have YouTube, Big Brother breathing down my neck. So that being said, thank you so much for everybody. Let me just pull up, see if there's any questions. Yeah, that mayor is awesome, Scott. I completely agree. When I saw the mayor telling the school board to resign or face prosecution, I got chills. Yeah, genetically modified lumber is what we tend to have now with respect to building materials, and it's not that great. CT. All right. Okay, well, that is that. So thank you so much. If you haven't already, check the chat on YouTube. I put the Zoom link in there. You can jump in and join us. And otherwise, thank you so much for watching. And now we're going to go to the private Zoom chat. All right, everybody, welcome. As usual, I want to make sure everybody